All right. Hi, everybody. It is December of 2023. If you can believe it, maybe you can believe it from our festive attire, but it is this month's edition of MSP Insiders with Blumira. I'm Jeremy Young, Director of Partner Strategy over here. We've got with us today Russ Gregory and Chris Christmas Ferner on the Blumira MSP team, and our special guest today is Dustin Bolander. Hey, Dustin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. We're going to talk all about insurance, which this is the time of year to talk about it because the majority of renewals are happening right meow. But before we do that, want to give a couple of like teasers of things that we are working on, we're gonna be working on. So thank you all for joining. The first one I want to make sure and acknowledge is we are working on integration for ConnectWise Manage. It's ongoing it's a project that has started. So we are trying to get 3 PSA integrations out next year. ConnectWise Manage will be the first one, landing in Q1. Autotask will end in between Q1 and Q2, and then Halo will be soon after that. So uh, it's not saying we'll stop working on integrations after that, but those are going to be the first 3 we tackle, with ConnectWise Manage being the first. So hopefully that is a nice little Christmas present there for you. Also, we have like thousands of organizations on the free edition underneath our MSP partners. And if for some of you who remember, before we did the latest round of edition changes, we had an edition called M365. And it was supposed to be like a stair step into a paid edition. But honestly, we priced it wrong, and that wasn't a secret. So I am working on bringing that back for MSPs at $1.50 a user, regardless of tier. And that will be basically the free edition plus support. It'll be 30 days of retention and detection filters and detection role management. So it'll be a real stair step from the free edition into meaningful logging and detection for M365, and pick 2 others, or G Suite if you want it to be the same restrictions that are in free, which is pick 3 cloud connectors other than AWS. But for our intents and purposes, it will mostly be value around M365, of course. But you could throw in a Duo, a Sentinel-1, an Umbrella, whatever else in there that meets your fancy. We are also working on, I think Sophos is has been moved to a cloud connector, or is right on the cusp of being re-released as a cloud connector. It was attached to the sensor. And this one kind of flew under the radar, but is going to be upcoming pretty soon. I don't know if any of y'all here are Jump Cloud partners, but we're going to have a Jump Cloud integration here pretty soon. And doesn't matter for most, but when it matters a lot. And so if you're a Jump Cloud partner, get excited. We're going to have one there too. Chris, Russ, did I miss anything in terms of coming down the pike product stuff?
Did you mention Sophos Cloud Connector?
It's coming soon. I'm not sure if it's in there.
I think
I
it's
can see it, but I can see everything, so I'm never exactly sure what I'm.
I think it's there, and yeah, it should be available to use.
Okay. And we've got a whole list of things coming next year, and we'll do another one in Q1 around roadmap for the year. But those are the nearest term, most important to MSP stuff. So as always, if you have feedback on that or anything else product related, go to blumira.com/ideas and put it in there. Or you can always put that stuff through our support queue, and have our support team track it for you, as you are also mentioning. It would be nice if, or can you do this for me, please? They'll track that as a feature request as well. Now, that was some just kind of fun Merry Christmas. You're getting some cool stuff in the product. But today we're gathered here to actually talk about cyber insurance. And uh Dustin he's a local to me. We're both down here in Austin, Texas. We've been working together for years at various companies. Dustin came from the MSP space, still has one of his fingers in one of his many pots is in his MSP, but he has also gotten deeper and deeper into insurance as it relates to MSPs. And so he's going to give us kind of an update about what's going on in the market, what some of this stuff means, and then also talk to you about a program that he has put together and is uh, it's worth talking about for multiple reasons. But long story short, it's going to give the MSPs the respect they deserve in the process of when a claim happens and the value that you're already providing. And so let's learn more about that. But Dustin, tell us a little about yourself and go ahead and you can share your screen when you're ready and we can start talking. But I would love to just give an overview of who you are and how you came into this interesting position as cybersecurity insurance expert that you are now.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the MSP industry, basically during college, I guess, going back all the way to 2007. So this is right now, Jeremy mentioned I own an MSP. We focus pretty much exclusively on law firms. The whole reason I did that was because nobody else wanted them. So I was just like, cool, greenfield opportunity, right? So this is my second MSP that I've owned. We're 27 people right now. And the whole cyber insurance thing was going back to 2020, 2021.
And they use Blumira.
We do. We use Blumira. We love it. Yeah, Jeremy and I got all sorts of stuff going on. But yeah, so one of the reasons on cyber insurance was going back like 2020, 2021. Like everybody else, we just kept getting these forms. We kept getting these stupid questions. We've had to deal with claims for a couple of clients, and it was a huge pain in the you know what. So my thing typically on that kind of thing was like, how can we, embrace it more? How can we take advantage of it? So we started building some of our sales and security processes around cyber insurance. I'm not going to say I was the first one to do it, but I was very early to it. And then at that point, one of the things that happened, going back to Jeremy and I working together, was Jeremy connected me with Fifth Wall. And so they brought me on board as kind of the channel builder, so to speak, where it was like, okay, how can MSPs work with cyber insurance? What do we need to know about it? So since 2021, I've been spending about half my time in the insurance world. And we're going to dig in here in a little bit to the new company that we just launched. But it finally got to the point of, I really hate saying that if you want something done right, do it yourself. But it was if you want something done the way you want to do it yourself, I guess is maybe a better way to put it, which led us here today. So, all right, let me share this out 1 second. So the two pieces I'm going to cover today are around the just what's going on in insurance in general, what we all need to be thinking about, be ready for this next year. And then I'll go specifically into the new insurance policy that we're launching.
And while you're bringing that up, you mentioned that I introduced you to the Fifth Wall team. So Fifth Wall, for those of you who don't know, Fifth Wall Solutions, they are I'll probably say it wrong, and Dustin correct me, but they are a carrier
It's a
that
distributor, which is
just
basically, think of them as like the Pax8 of insurance. So, got a
but
huge line card of carriers.
solely focused on cyber.
Correct. 100%, nothing else besides cyber.
Yeah, and so I got introduced to them. It was right about now because it was either the day before Christmas or the day before New Year's in I think 2020. And when I met the president there and we started chatting, and I could immediately tell he like actually got it versus all the other insurance people that I talked to that were kind of like, what's an MSP and what is IT and but even worse than that, they didn't know anything about cybersecurity side and they were selling cyber insurance, so it's very eyebrow raising to think about that. But uh we have since then continued to try to find ways to partner better and make this happen in the MSP space because MSPs provide so much value in this process, whether they're acknowledged or not. And so that's this is starting to be the next evolution of what that looks like. So go ahead and kind of give us some trends there, sir.
Yeah. And the whole thing on insurance is like, I realize I'm incredibly biased saying this, but cyber insurance to a large degree, if you work it right, is one of the best things to happen to our industry as an MSP, because you can sit there and scream at your clients till you're blue in the face saying, we need to turn on MFA, right? Let's just pick the most simple example. I need you to turn on MFA. It's already built in. Oh no, it's inconvenient. It's annoying. Like, no, I don't want to do it. The minute you come in and you say this insurance policy says you need to do this, the client's like, why didn't you have this done already, right? So it's taking that insurance and leveraging it to make them do the stuff that they're supposed to be doing for good security, right? And that's just driving that continual evolution. So talking 2024, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Sweet. Okay, so one of the things I always say with insurance is it'll perpetually be, 12, 18 months behind what actual good cybersecurity looks like. They're still coming out with stuff today where it's like, oh yeah, log4j, man, that's a serious, hey Jeremy, have you seen this log4j thing? I'm like, yeah, we did a while back, right? So to Jeremy's point about the agents not understanding cybersecurity, compared to the group in this room, like that's going to forever be the case, right? That's not their primary job. You'll get the occasional ones, but they're still lagging. So
It's
that
like
being
when
said,
you
though,
go to Christmas at family Christmas and they say something like, "Oh yeah, MSPs didn't that one company get breached a whole bunch of them 2 Julys ago?" Like, yeah, man. That
so that's the way I got
things
out
have
of
happened
Jeremy's
since then.
computers at the holidays now, is I just say I work in insurance now, and then nobody wants to talk to me.
Oh, so
Right?
yeah, they won't ask you about computer problems.
Yep. And they don't want to talk about
Smart,
work at all for some reason either at that point.
smart, real smart.
But so yeah, the controls are going to continue to catch up. One thing that always comes up, it's like, why do insurance companies ask these questions, right? What's this, that, or the other? So there's two things that drive these controls. The first one is going to be trying to prevent claims, right? Insurance companies do the part that everybody says is like all they care about is the bottom line, which is basically true. So from that, there's two things that they got to do that they can control that bottom line. First one is prevent claims, right? Reduce the amount of breaches that happen. And then the second one is to reduce the claim costs. So you know that claims are going to happen. What can you do to make it better? So we go back and we look at, I'm not going to go into the pre-breach stuff very much today. But you have your, is your firewall configured correctly, your MFA, that kind of stuff. But where we're starting to see them realize is that they can substantially, there's somebody that I know in the industry that says we want to take $800,000 claims and make them $80,000 claims, right? So if we use that mentality, that's where you start seeing stuff suddenly around. Like one of the big ones that insurance is hot on right now is 24/7 EDR. If you don't have that in your stack right now, that's going to be one of the big ones this next year. They're already starting to require that for some really high risk businesses. IR plans is the other one. Do you have a written IR plan? And now they're starting to actually ask, have you tested that in the last 12 months, right? It's not just do you have something. And then the other part is around SIEM, right? Knowing, because what will happen is we go in to work a claim, right? Let's pick the easiest example, healthcare company. So we got 10,000 patient records. Hackers got into the system. We know that, right? Something happened. But what specifically, if that data is not there for the claims people to be able to affirmatively say, here's what they got into or here's what they did not. At that point, you got to assume they got to everything. So now we're sending out 10,000 notifications to patients that your data got breached. We're having to do 10,000. And even down here in Texas, I think it's like $250 per record. And of course, it's Texas. So, we're one of the cheaper, less strict ones. You have 10,000 patient records get released in New York or California, you're going to be having a bad day. So around those claims costs, again, we're able to come in with a SIM and we're able to say, oh, cool, they got into Jeremy's mailbox and they didn't get into the file server at all. Suddenly you're in a lot better shape, right?
Yep.
So that's the other piece that they're starting to look more heavily on, right? Is we know it's IT. I've been in IT a long time. We all love the preventative. Oh yeah, I'm going to put this in to keep the attackers out. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And we've seen this swing a lot in the MSP industry the last couple of years, just around the right of boom, right? Is how can we do to reduce that damage? Again, insurance being behind the times. Here we are 18 months later, and insurance is saying, guess what, guys? Hey, Chris, this whole right of boom thing is something really important you should be thinking about. So you're going to see more emphasis on that this next year, just around that, the detection. I love the NIST CSF. So that detect, respond, recover phases versus the identify and protect.
It makes sense that insurance will start and more progressively as they learn what a SIM actually does, like and want to require a SIM because it's kind of like the insurance of the cybersecurity tools. Because yes, it does allow you to stop things and find things that you didn't otherwise see, but having the logs available so that you can actually have the data to understand what happened post incident And as you were saying, turn a $1 million claim into a $100,000 claim, because you can actually say, this is how they got on. This is when it happened. Anything pre this, you could actually back up to that date and recover and be fine. Versus if you don't have that data, it's just nuke and repave, and we don't know. And we got to like notify everyone because we don't know. Those
Right.
are two very different scenarios.
Yep. And I still think, hopefully there's no actual insurance people listening on this call because they're going to be offended by this. But it's like, I still don't
Earmuffs.
fully realize the impact of that, because you're seeing already, if any of you guys have talked around the, claims process, a incident happens where insurance is like, don't touch anything. A big reason for that is in a lot of situations, and I'm speaking mostly to SMB, right? Which is where the majority of what we do is. Um, there's not stuff in place. So rebooting, you suddenly lose that forensic data, that kind of thing. Just that whole concept of the SIEM being able to grab and retain, all of that, or at least close to it. I don't think that's fully clicked with insurance yet. So as we go on more and more, there's going to be a turning point where it's going to be a mandatory, unless you're the smallest, lowest risk business. I think kind of like that 24/7 EDR, that insurance suddenly realized, the Russian teenage hackers don't go home at 8 p.m. just like your staff does, right? They're doing stuff in the middle of the night on the weekends. That and SIEM are going to be two of the pieces that are going to be pushed the hardest by insurance.
When you say 24/7 EDR, what do you mean 24/7 EDR?
I'll tell you what I don't mean, because that's a little bit easier, and where we
Sure.
see people getting into trouble on it is, hey, at my MSP, our guys go home at 8 p.m. I got a guy with a beeper in the middle of the night. If there's an alert, he's going to jump on and look at it. Let's be realistic. I've been on call plenty of times. I've slept through some of the calls. Is having something in place that's generally they're looking for staffed 24/7, but not always, but just something that's working. You don't want to have a manual process without somebody sitting there in the middle of the night. So the automation can be a gray area. Some carriers are going to take it, some aren't right now. Fully staffed is definitely, butts and seats is the phrase that I use, is even better from that perspective. But what they're really looking to avoid is, and what'll get you in trouble, we always talk about, okay, I'm worried, is we check that yes on 24/7 security. Something happens, then the insurance carrier and your customer come back and realize like, oh no, it was just, Russ was on call that weekend, and oh, their on-call policy is he, checks email once a weekend. That's not going to fly. That's what's going to be, put you in a bad spot.
A vendor partnership would qualify. So like a Huntress
Oh,
managed
100%.
defender.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
It's just having somebody there, whether that's first party, third party. I'm not saying run out and build your own 24/7 SOC.
Don't do that.
Yeah, seems like a terrible idea. So,
Thanks for that.
yeah, so that's going to be kind of the two big things this next year. We're already seeing the 24/7 EDR piece that's started hitting this year, and next year that's going to be pretty full-fledged. I would say at this point, if you don't have that across all of your customers, have a plan in place at least. That's another nice thing. Again, insurance is a great thing to happen in our industry, because now they get that insurance form and it says 24/7 EDR on there, and you go, hey guys, guess what? I have this sitting here ready to go. Here's the quote. It'll take us, 4 to 8 hours to get it rolled out to everybody. And then you can check yes, and we can get this form inputted. So the next one is hard market. So I try to avoid jargon, but this is one of my favorite nerdy insurance terms. Hard market just means it's a hard for you to get a policy, and or that policy is expensive, right? You've probably all seen this to where, even your MSP insurance is still going up. It's not as bad as it was 2 years ago, but it's still moving that direction. We're seeing a lot of people that are going up, 10, 20%, not as bad. But the other part too is the getting coverage in the first place. So 2 years ago, you could come in drunk off the street to the carriers and say, I don't have MFA. I don't rotate my passwords. They're gonna be like, awesome, Chris, you sound like a great risk. Let me give you a policy. And we all know how that went for them, and they suddenly realized, geez, we do actually need to have at least some base security controls in place. Right now, there's still it's a bar below what most MSPs are going to say is a good baseline of security. There's carriers out there you can get a policy without having MFA on externally. There are carriers out there that you can even have RDP open to the internet, and they will give you a policy. It's kind of insane. That is starting to change. They're starting to raise that baseline. It's still going to be pretty low. If you are, as an MSP, if you have clients that are coming in below that just rock bottom baseline in insurance, I would say take a hard look in a mirror, because that's not a good spot to be in, right? You should be ahead of insurance every step of the way, usually a couple years ahead of insurance. But this next year, they are going to be pushing that up a little bit more, right? MFA as a absolute requirement. I mentioned earlier, they're starting to do 24/7 EDR more and more. If you have a customer coming in that's like a $2 million a year revenue manufacturer, maybe they're not going to enforce the EDR piece. But as they get bigger, anything over 10 million, that's going to be a question on there. It's going to impact stuff. So make sure get that baseline raised up, right? John asked about do pre-insurance cheat sheet. So I'm gonna plug Fifthwall for a second because we built that stuff out.
I'm on their site grabbing the resources, finding the resources link to pop in there.
Yeah. So we put together and we keep it updated every couple months, John, on kind of here's where you want to be on the core controls is what we call it. So, and I'm doing it off the cuff, so I'm gonna miss one of them. But patching anything urgent or higher critical under 30 days, security awareness training annually, which again is kind of crazy to me, one time a year, and I don't know any carrier that's not happy with that. Multi-factor on all external surfaces. And then the other one is, remember earlier we talked about things to reduce claim costs, right? So ransomware hits, how fast can we get back online? So backups are a big item of emphasis, that we want to have our backups off-site. We want to have our backups to where they can't be encrypted also, things like that. So you have some questions around having just some really solid backups that the attackers can't get to easily, and then that you're able to restore relatively quickly. So that'll get you a good baseline. Then there's some advanced controls as well. Jeremy or I will get that shared out here in a minute. But yeah, so Fifthwall we built around, we have 43 different carriers that we go to. So we built this as this is, gets you a good amount of carriers, or most carriers will qualify you to give you a policy, and you'll get a decent rate. You can go above and beyond past that, but it's just kind of that it gets you that solid insurance baseline. All right, so the last one, and this is the really interesting part. And Jeremy, I'm going to say, give me some good color commentary on this, because it's just such an interesting dynamic. Is you're seeing a lot of insurance carriers now. So they go, okay, guess what? Hey, Russ, here's your policy. By the way, this includes 2 hours of consulting with blah, blah, blah sales engineer. Or that, as part of this, we would recommend you set up a meeting with our MSSP or our division. What are we going to, here's these services we offer. Or have you seen our marketplace where we sell SentinelOne is the favorite thing. The insurance industry loves SentinelOne. So they're always going to bring up SentinelOne. Well, like Jeremy mentioned Huntress earlier, right? We already have Huntress. Well, they're sending the paperwork to the insured saying, hey guys, here's this marketplace that we got. You should check out, SentinelOne. Okay, this is conflicting a little bit. So you're starting to run into, you got to go in defensively. You don't want to have your customer going through the renewal without you being involved on it. So if nothing else, you say insurance is dumb, it's a scam, I don't want anything to do with it, it's the liability, reason after reason after reason. What we're seeing happen, and I'll give you a good story about a buddy of mine up in New York, was that he had one day, he got a call from his customer and said, hey, I'm doing this renewal, insurance renewal. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, let me know what you need. And he goes, well, they're coming in to do a scan, so I need you to give them domain admin credentials. And he's like, what the heck? Well, it ends up the agent was coming in and running basically a rapid fire tools. And so he's like, yeah, we got to do it on there. That comes back. And I think everybody in the room has probably seen rapid fire tools before, it scares the snot out of somebody that's not technical. It's like, ooh, it's red flag, red flag, red flag, right? So his customer's kind of sitting there going, ooh, this isn't good. He explained some of it away. And then the next year, though, is they brought in a carrier that brought in their own EDR and their own backups as part of that. So they called him again. They said, hey, we just renewed insurance. He's going, oh, great, stupid scans, right? Like, we need you, I'm going to send you some stuff over. We need you to install this stuff on the network. So that's where you don't want to end up. There's some carriers that are, pushing that harder. There's some that aren't pushing it at all. But just having that conversation with the customer so that as they're going into it, you don't want to get that cold call, so to speak, right? You want to be Jeremy sitting there talking to them, and then they call him and they say, "Hey, Jeremy, this is an interesting one. Remember you were talking to me about insurance? Yeah. Well, this company says they can do X, Y, and Z. We were talking, you said that stuff's covered already, right? Oh yeah, my MSP, we provide that for you, right? You definitely don't want to do that. That's not something we can support on your network. Because, okay, cool, that policy was a little bit more money anyways. So I know I can save some going to this other one. Thanks for your time.
Well, and I've got another. So we have a mutual friend who owns he used to own an MSP. It turned into an MSSP that really did IR for MSPs for a long time, and then they got purchased by an insurance carrier. And what do you think when they get wrapped into something? What are they doing at the end of the IR event? They're selling both cybersecurity services, and because they used to be an MSP, they have technical services as well. So it's defensive on both fronts. You want to make sure that whatever your clients may or may not be shopping in the insurance side, the insurance companies are starting to buy MSPs, starting to buy I meant MSSPs, some of whom have IT backgrounds, to try and, as Dustin is saying, point them to preferred people, preferred carriers, preferred products uh, that they know are in line with bringing their risk profiles down. And then in the event of an incident, they're doing it again on the back end because they've already got their preferred IR carriers, some of which are MSSPs that are going to try and sell them stuff that you're already doing. So making sure you are controlling this conversation and that you have trained your clients to come to you for this is a defensive best practice, because it's going to introduce a lot of risk if you're not in control of this conversation.
Yep. And I mean, I've seen, so one claim on our MSP customer that we were working the one time, they actually, before we were fully restored, they had a sales guy on there pitching from the IR provider. They had a sales guy on there pitching, their 24/7 SOC. That's a whole other deeper conversation that bothers the hell out of me. But the point is, it's out there. You got to be ready for it. It's just like other MSPs calling your customers and, trying to get in there. For the most part, I would say 50 to 70% of insurance carriers and agents are in some way kind of competition with you. So just the important takeaway there, be on the defensive, right? All right. Cool. So going into my next slide, the running joke I always hear from people is insurance is a pyramid scheme, right? So I did a diagram, and for some reason, every time I do an insurance diagram, it always ends up coming out in the same shape here. So here we go. So the next part we're going to talk about is Jeremy said we got something new coming out. So this goes back to after 2.5, 3 years of the carriers are starting to get it. We're starting to make some progress, but it's still just pushing that boulder uphill. The last couple of months that we were able to pull something together and said, if you want to do it our way, then we got to go out and do it ourselves, right? It was just at some point we can't convince these carriers to do everything the fully right way. So a new company that we have launching called Beltex. And this diagram, just real simple. You have your agents and agencies that are out there giving policies to people, right? If they're a smaller agency or they don't have expertise, so Jeremy said earlier at Fifthball, we're 100% cyber. So a lot of agencies come to us. That was actually our original business, was working with agencies. They'd come to us for cyber. So they'd pull in, if you guys know Wilson and Will and Andy, the agency would pull in them as their cyber expert to sell the policy and help consult on it. And then we have those carrier relationships because, again, they go, young insurance, like, you guys don't know anything about cyber, but we'll work with Fifthball and you guys can work with them, right? So that's that wholesale, that distribution. And then above that, so you have the policies. There's all sorts of different names. I'm not going to geek out on insurance on this, but whenever you look at two big popular ones that you've probably seen for clients have been Coalition and Cowbell. Both of them are programs. They have a carrier behind them that basically said, hey, Jeremy, here's my, policy. Here's some things that you're allowed to do and change on it. But then it still has that full guarantee from the carrier, who also sometimes is handling the claims, other things like that. So that's Beltex. We have a big established carrier that's been around since 2015. And they gave us a proverbial sandbox to play in and said, you can do, these 10 things. We've asked for a couple other things. They said yes to some. They've said no to others. But the core point of that is the Beltex policy is unique to us. We designed a majority of it in collaboration with the carrier, and we are, cross your fingers for me, guys. We're waiting on the final compliance sign off. I'm hoping we're going to be able to start issuing policies tomorrow. But we're like,
Hey, tomorrow.
so yeah. But let me run you through. And this is where hit me with questions, please, comments, even criticisms. But we did a lot of this going into it was we started off, we whiteboarded and just said, here's all the pain points of why insurance sucks for MSPs, right? To be clear too, this is a policy for your customers. We don't insure your MSP. This is insurance for your customers. So a couple different pieces. The questions are horrible, almost universally. Do you have MFA on your switches is my favorite one. You can tell that somebody who doesn't work in IT wrote that. That still just blows my mind. I've never been able to get an answer on how they came up with that either. But so on the front end, the questions that we're doing, they're written by a team of us from the MSP space. I've had, if you guys know, Wes Spencer and Mike Riggs, they're involved as well. There's a couple others too. Is we're sitting there taking these questions and being like, okay, if I got this from an IT, from a cybersecurity perspective, would I want to rip the paper in half? Would I want to throw my laptop out the window? That kind of thing. So we're trying to make these questions as explicit as we can. So for example, the one that we have on the application around RDP is, do you expose a remote desktop protocol directly, not through an RD gateway, on port 3389 or on another port providing the similar service, right? It's not just, do you expose remote desktop, because then it's well, I use a remote desktop gateway. Is that okay? Things like that. So that's the big piece on the front end, transparency, right? We want to make these questions easy. We want to make it clear. One thing we're working with the Blumira team on is around the SIM side of it. So do you use a SIM? Like, okay, that doesn't, right? Yeah, sure. So we're looking for, do you have 1 year retention?
Yeah.
And then a big sticking point for Jeremy and I was, okay, we got this thing. Can we actually get data out of it? Right. So, oh yeah, we got it. But whenever it comes time, put
So I'm
your,
gonna get on my soapbox for a minute.
oh yeah, please.
There's a lot of MDR providers in our space and just general the security space that will tack on a little bit of retention to a couple of things and be like, we're a SIM now. And you've seen CrowdStrike, you've seen SentinelOne buy data lake companies, which allows you to retain data longer and say, we're a SIM now. That is not the same thing. And also, there's one in particular I have in mind that basically has a syslog server and allows you to like point firewalls to it, and they're like, yeah, this is our SIM product. So a syslog server is a syslog server, and the whole point of a SIM is getting all the data from all the things, but being able to use that for detection and response, be able to use that data for an investigation, being able to get that data out of the tool in the need of an investigation or in the case of an IR incident. And I had an MSP come to us directly from said vendor after an incident where he believed during the sales pitch that they were, by checking, like giving them this more money for this thing, they had a SIM. And then during an incident found out that, oh, well, you can only get logs out of that by the day in PDF format. That doesn't help anything. And it's basically trash. It is hot garbage trash that it doesn't satisfy any requirements. It doesn't help in an insecurity incident. So all logs are not created equal. All retention is not created equal. All things that say SIM are not created equal. So you do have to get a little bit more into the weeds and I know a lot of us want to just like, hey, what is the minimum viable product I can get to check this box? But I would encourage you, and this is not just SIM, on all of these things, try to understand why the requirement is placed, and not just for cyber insurance, also for if you're doing NIST, if you're doing CIS, whatever you're doing, the requirements are usually there for a reason. Try to understand the why around it and select tilt your stack based on the why, not based on the I can check this box by because somebody says this requires this. The reason you want a SIEM is because you're getting all of the logs. You're able to apply detection to those logs in a meaningful way that allows you to act upon them. And you can actually use that data for investigative purposes and get it out when you need it. And going back to my comment on all logs are not created equal, not just the retention. We've also had detections catch that same vendor turning off Windows event IDs because they don't want the data because it costs money to retain data, even though they're not retaining it for longer than like I think 30 or 90 days. When other vendors like an actual SIEM use those things for other detections. And so just be careful who you partner with and start to understand, like ask the second tier questions of, hey, yeah, we retain data. Okay, are you just retaining like who logged into the console? Because that doesn't help. I need like all the event IDs. I need all of the information because you don't want to be in that situation where you find out after an incident when you need all these logs and you've been paying for the service and paying for the retention. I can
Right.
get you a day at a time in PDF format. Okay,
Yeah. And that was going
stepping
back to,
off my
we want to reduce the damage from the claims, right? The faster we can get the right data out, the faster we can get it out, that it's not, the IR people are going to kill you if you sit there and say, hey, Jeremy, here's your, 70 PDFs, have fun with it. Like, I guess somebody has to sit there and export from Acrobat to Excel at that point, something like that.
they're gonna delete. They're not even gonna look at them.
Yep. So looking for stuff like that, right? That's a really good example. That's how Jeremy and I started collaborating on this originally, was that we've seen that too on the insurance side, where it's like, yeah, okay, it's a SIM. Technically you have logs, but it's like, this isn't usable by the RR team. So we want to have the right tools in place, and the ability to use them too. So, all right, the other part. We should have done a poll, but
What's the poll do you want? I can make one real quick.
Has anybody worked with a local agent that made the process go faster for your clients getting insurance? I know how this is going to turn out. So I'll walk you through as like the typical experience, right? So, all right, it's time for renewal. So let's say it's like January 1st, they're renewing because this is the reality of everybody right now. Most companies still haven't gotten any renewal information. They're sitting there waiting. With insurance, in almost every carrier, you can start renewing 60 or 45 days in advance. So the agents are lazy, right? Again, I hope nobody from insurance is listening on this. But so for a lot of these SMBs, though, I need a policy. I know I need $1 million. It's like buying your car insurance. Why are we, I'm not going to pick up the phone and go call somebody for my car insurance and then go sit through 2 phone calls and then here's a bunch of PDFs. I go to Progressive, I fill out the thing, it sits there, it spins for a minute, and then here's a quote. If I'm doing something more complicated, right? If I have a company where we have 5 wrapped vans, I'm going to go through and probably talk to somebody at that point. But for the basic, like I know what I need $1 million, or a lot of us as MSPs have clients with contractual requirements, right? Where they need $3 million. Okay, cool. I need to go get a $3 million policy. So nobody has corrected me on this yet, so I'm going to keep saying it. Beltex will be the only policy that you can go get without having to talk to somebody. You can put in your information and you immediately get a quote. It's a 2-minute process, and then at that point they have a quote and they can e-sign it right there, they can pay, and they're done. So it's call it the progressive model, or I think like Geico does the same thing, to be able to get in there, get it done immediately. Instead of hey, Jeremy, it's December 31st, here's this renewal quote that I should have talked to you. And you're like, oh God, it went up like 40%. Can we go back through? Oh, it's going to take me a couple days. We're down to the wire. So that was one of my big things, was the bigger, more complex customers that you have. If you have somebody that's a, 80 million a year CPA firm, Beltex probably isn't a good fit, right? Their needs are a little bit more complicated. They probably should be talking to an agent. But these ones that you're working with where it's, $5 million a year with 3 locations restaurant, like, what they, right? We have PCI in place. We have these basic controls. they need to have the owner says we want a $2 million policy. Beltex is the easy button. The other part
I
of that
did launch the poll, so everybody should be seeing the poll. I don't even know if I got the question right. Has anyone worked with an agent that made the renewal go faster? Yes, my agent is amazing. No, they're the worst, or not sure. I get the form the day before the renewal. So go ahead and give me a did I capture that anywhere close to right, Dustin?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. I'll end the poll here in about a minute. So just give me more info. Tell us how you feel. And if those answers don't cover it, feel free to chat.
Yeah, and kind of on that same topic, everybody's, oh, do I fill out the form? Do I not fill out the form? Right? That's probably the second hottest topic besides being, is insurance going to come after me? Is just that liability around the forms. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not a lawyer. I personally am a big fan of Brad Gross's take of it's kind of, you're doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. But one of the things that we did, so as the insurer, as the program, I can't sit here and say that your client won't turn around and come after you or anything like that. But what we can do is that's a contract between the customer and the insurance company. So we are going to have, and we're not going to launch with this day one, unfortunately, but it will be coming hopefully January. We're going to have a separate form that pre-fills the form for them. And so it's going to have, some language on it. This is not a contract between you and the insurance carrier. This is not a commitment or anything like that. All it's doing is pre-filling. So then whenever your customer goes to do the form, they are still having to verify and then e-sign for those answers. So again, just putting a little more arm's length on it, trying to help minimize the fears, the risk for everybody.
It got about 38% participation in the poll. About a quarter of the respondents do have an amazing agent. So that's awesome. Congratulations. The rest are either not a fan of their agent or probably don't even know who the agent is because they get the day before they get the form from their client the day before the renewal and are just like, damn it.
Yep.
Again. Which
Story of my life, man.
Chris, am I giving you flashbacks?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yep. Hey, we need this real quick because it's due yesterday, whatever, and it's like, all right, we better ask for an extension or something because it's not happening today.
One, I'm gonna put a link in the chat. We have and we'll probably be updating this for 2024 just to give it another look see. But we a while ago put a page up for a lot of common questions that you see on cyber insurance forums. And then we gave suggested responses. If you were using Blumira to the fullest, you could answer this question this way. It is not fully copy and paste. Like, make sure that statement is true, but it also helps you understand all of the things that Blumira does in our own words. If you were asked that question and using Blumira, and if you haven't seen this and just filled out a bunch of forms, I'm sorry, but please bookmark it. And it also just helps you understand generally when rubber meets the road, what is a good service description, what we do and what we don't do. And speaking of service description, I just added one to our partner kit. And if you go to that partner kit link and scroll down to quote and onboard your customers, there is a PDF there that I am now grabbing and I will put in here. And this is for if you need a service description of Blumira to add into your MSA, to add into your quoting guide or whatever, you can adopt a lot of that language as a description that doesn't really keep Blumira in the name of it, but just this is what the solution does, which is kind of helpful and relevant for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Andrew had asked in the Q&A, just in case people didn't see it, who's backing Beltex? The answer is Spinnaker Hippo. That probably doesn't mean anything to 99% of you guys, but if you want to look it up, that's who our carrier partner is, and that's the in insurance we call it on the paper. So your actual policy paperwork that you get is going to be Spinnaker's paper and guaranteed. So,
and to reiterate why I think this is really important, MSPs have been kind of locked out of this process. Like, you guys get sent the forms, you do most of the work. Some of you have switched to this model where you're working with a fifth wall or something of the like to try to proactively provide the service uh, in a kind of, let me introduce you to a subject matter expert kind of way. That's great. What this is doing is take it to the next step so that you can actually get fairly compensated for your work. Because in the event of an incident, there's some people that are just like, hey, hands off, don't touch anything. And you're sitting there like, I got backups. I could do this right now. This could completely be done. Just say the word. And you've got egos from MSSPs or IR companies like telling you don't touch anything, and no respect, when we're getting to the point where some of these carriers are realizing, oh, if we had just listened to their technology provider, the cost of this would have been reduced dramatically, and might not have needed all the lawyers and all the IR companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're entering into hopefully what is more of a win-win, where you're going to have to get looped in to help whoever is doing the responding. But if you can do the responding, you can get people back up and running quickly. They are starting to understand there's a lot of value in that. And that's what this is trying to do, is getting you looped into that. So not only can you get your clients back up and running faster, but you can also possibly get compensated for that effort, and you don't have to sit there and play middleman to a bunch of people who really don't need to be involved to begin with. Uh, and now Dustin can pull back my words because I'm
No,
giving my take on it.
you did great.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest pieces on this was around the claims process, because, and even for me, I mentioned we've had a couple at my MSP, so of course they call me right away and go, hey, insurance guy, get back over here, we need your help. And it's just rough. We had one, this was about 2 years ago, where there's footholds inside the environment, and it was Huntress, had caught them, had shut some things down. And the incident response guys came in, they're just like, oh, hey, we're going to deploy Sentinel on everywhere, and we need you to turn the full environment back on. And our CISO was like, what the hell's wrong with you guys? Like, no, we know, we have the logs, we have the alerts, we know there's at least footholds on these. Why don't we start by investigating here? It took like 3 back and forths on that. And then afterwards, whenever they're kind of reviewing it, they're like, hey, those guys actually kind of knew what they were talking about. For just, it was, again, something super fundamental, though. It wasn't rocket science that we were doing. My MSP is not a MSSP or an incident response company or anything, but it was just a little bit of common sense. So whenever we were going to get the Beltex program set up, that was one of our big things, looking for a carrier partner. And so what we have, and I'll start off by saying this is like from the lawyers, right, is nothing is guaranteed. It is a situational thing every single time, because it's insurance, short of you becoming a full IR firm and getting a contract with the carrier. We can't guarantee it, but in the majority of cases, there is going to be reimbursement for you doing the approved parts of the claim. So Jeremy used the example restoring backups. There's no situation I can think of ever to where an outside incident response firm should be involved in restoring backups, right? They look at it, they say, okay, the guys got in on the 18th. Hey, Jeremy, can you guys go and restore from the 17th? All right, cool, turn us loose. So that side of it, once we're working the claim, there will be a claim coach, so to speak. It's going to be a lawyer probably in 99% of the cases, but there will be directions to your MSP. And of course, again, there's restrictions on this. You're going to have to submit some certain things. One of the interesting parts that we had pushback from, and that will be a requirement for this program, is a lot of MSPs apparently go into these claims and they put somebody in that's not allowed to make decisions. So they say, hey, Jeremy, like, you're good. Can you go restore backups? Jeremy goes, well, I need to go talk to my boss. It's going to be a couple hours. So that's one of the pieces on the Beltex program to be eligible for that, is you have to have a decision maker available 24/7 through the claim. So that we can say, rather than, hey, Jeremy, I got to go run this guy down. It's give me 2 minutes real quick. Chris has been on standby. I'll call him real quick, make sure he's okay with it. Then we can make it happen. So we've been kind of both sides of the fence, right? Insurance said we're frustrated with X, Y, and Z. One of the other pieces, we talked about this a little bit earlier. For those of you that don't have a SIEM, go buy Blumira. but if you don't have it still, is that the whole destroying evidence, right? So we rebooted a bunch of stuff. We shut it down. We just lost logs, things like that. So we're going to have a playbook for you that says, in the event of something happening, go do X, Y, Z. My favorite example is on 365 for a business email compromise, right? They got into somebody's account. Why can't we shut that thing down, right? Let's just disable it. We're going to let it sit. At that point, we're not going to go clear out rules. We're not going to do X, Y, and Z. We're just going to shut that account down so the attackers don't have access. Cool. That's going to be something in the playbook that says, in the event this happens, go into 365. You can do disable. You can start exporting the unified audit logs and X, Y, and Z, right? So you're able to move quick while we're waiting on the claims team on the insurance side. So that'll be, it's the kind of, call it the pre-claim process of, here's these 10 things that you're allowed to do. And that claim gets going. All right, cool. The lawyers are on the phone. The project managers are on the phone, this, that, and the other. And then it's at that point, we're going to turn around and say to you guys, hey, Russ, we're at a point, we determined this is the issue. Can you start restoring from backup, please? And then at the end of it, you have your invoice, you submit it in. And again, I'm using the word eligible very specifically. I hope if our lawyers are on here that I'm doing a good job. Because again, it's every time that the lawyer's going to have to review and sign off on it, but it is built into the program. It is the intention of it. So the cool part on it, Jeremy is like, what's the action item, man? What's the action item? There's that link right there. So we can't certify and approve every MSP under the sun to get started. So we are limiting this to a couple of our partnerships that we're launching with, like Blumira. So my thought process was, the lawyers can only get through so many MSPs. Let's work with the MSPs that understand the value of kind of the next level tools that we do want to have in place. So in order to be able to get reimbursed for the IR work, you do have to be pre-approved. We are going to be submitting the first round of MSPs on the 31st of this month. It's a really lightweight process, guys. I'm hoping that we're going to have a cool logo and like a badge that you can use as well. That's one of my goals on that. Again, got to get the lawyers to sign off on it. But if you fill that form out, again, December 31st, we're sending that over to the lawyers. They're going to review it. So then at that point, whenever you do have a client that has a claim, if they have a Beltex policy, when they put in the claim, they bring you onto the call and the attorneys go, oh yeah, here's on the file, I show that these guys are pre-approved, right? And they'll work with you at that point. So start to finish, we're trying to build everything in to, make MSP, insurance, and your customer work better side by side.
And Dustin, a very important question. What does Beltex mean? And what is this logo where it's like a deer is popping out of a cloud?
Jacob wins the prize. It is a Beltex sheep, which if you go look it up, we had settled on a sheep as the logo. And I can tell you that this is one of those, just like, this is the dumbest backstory. I was driving, actually, Jeremy, I was driving down 290 and talking to Reed Wellock about it. And it was like, yeah, we're gonna do it like as a sheep. And then at that point, he said, oh, dude, Google Beltex sheep. Like, this is the dumbest looking thing I've ever seen. And so whenever we pulled up, we are like, that sounds really insurancy too. Like, it's a Beltex sheep is a good insurance company name. So it is a sheep. Jacob was correct.
Looks very hard-headed.
Yeah. But yeah, so
with Beltex don't get fleeced. Thank you, Jacob. I think Jacob was FFA back in the day, if I had to guess.
I'm gonna have to, whenever we get t-shirts made, you're definitely on the list, Jacob. I love it.
I have not until this moment actually Google image searched Beltex sheep, and yeah, they are interesting looking characters. It's like a lamb mated with a pit bull, and you have a Beltex.
Yeah, like I said, it's the worst. Hey, how did you pick your logo? Is we thought it was funny looking. So jumping back, the one other piece too on here was I don't have to do a poll to know how bad this is, but how many of us have been bit by just stupid external scans of, here's this IP address that's not associated with the business at all. One of my most annoying ones lately is there's one major carrier that is flagging FortiGates and Sonic walls, and I forget one other one. And so it's like, it's a critical vulnerability. Right? Cool. Show me the CV score. Like, no, I mean the fact that you have a firewall. well, it's patched. We have MFA on VPN. We limit it to a certain amount of users, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yeah, but it's critical. It's a FortiGate. So that's one of the other pieces that we're not doing, is our external scanning is very minimal. And we'll be looping you in as the MSP first, right? We don't ever want to blindside the client, or blindside you rather, by going to the client if we can avoid it. There's certain regulatory things where we'll have to, but on the scans, going into renewal, it'll be, hey, we see these three things, can you give us an explanation on it? But all of us on the Beltex team, have at least a semblance of realistic cybersecurity experience and knowledge. So it's not going to be an insurance guy sitting there going, hey, I saw it's a FortiGate. Right now, we're really just looking for that anything outstanding on CVEs, right? 30 days or less on the patching cadence. That's externally exposed. And then do you have RDP open to the internet?
Plus the answers to the questions that you're going to put in the form once you go right to that link. Well, thank you for joining us and sharing some knowledge, Dustin. And I'm very much looking forward to getting some of our Blumira partners down the Beltex route. Well, I'm reading Sean's. We've had some.
We're mostly talking about FFA, I think, at this point.
I was just checking to see if there were any extra questions. If there are extra questions, get them in now, because we were 3 minutes before, and we usually don't take this long. So good job. We took the whole time this time. Must have been interesting content. If not, I'm gonna say thank you very much for joining. Everyone, thank you for joining as many insiders as you have this year. We're gonna keep this up next year. We're gonna try and make it bigger. Our team is growing. The future factor authentication. Hire Jacob on your marketing team, I think, is the answer. We couldn't do any of this without you. We're going to have a great 2024 and provide you a lot more interesting content, interesting partnerships, and hopefully this one with Dustin, where Blumira is I think I can say is the preferred SIM of Beltex. I can say it. I don't know if Dustin can say it.
Yeah,
Well,
but Blumira is the gold standard of, kind of like we were talking earlier, is like, this is the way it needs to work. This is the way, it should work, right?
Thank you. And it's on recording, although you're not wearing a Christmas sweater, but I'll still take it.
Next time.
Charles, we will send out the recording. So if you were registered for this, you'll get a copy of the recording. We'll also drop the recording in MSP Geek and on channel program. So thank you all. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next year. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
See ya.